So welcome everybody to our personal development series. We're really pleased you're with us for the first of the autumn-winter 2022. And I'm joined again by the wonderful Ross McWilliam from Mindset Pro, who's going to take us through the subject of the fear of failure and how to overcome it. I'm Jenny Pelling. I'm the Director of Apprenticeship Development and Diversity. I've been really pleased to work with our apprentices and learners on topics relating to wellbeing and personal development. There's a quick quiz question for you there to complete, so please do that, and we'll take a look at the results anonymously at the end. So Ross, over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. Just as we were speaking then, my technology fail happened, and I thought, well, I'm in a bit of a failure now. But you know what always kicks in with me is, maybe it's experience, maybe it's just that I don't want to overstress things. I just think we'll sort it out. And I have that mindset, we'll sort it out. And if we can't, we can't. And I think that's interesting to overlay on top of what we're going to do today. It's not about random activities, not about luck. It's about preparation, but an acceptance. There's a good word, an acceptance of things. Okay, so that's the template I'll talk about today. As we're talking, the ones who've been with us on the last webinars want to make you feel safe and secure. Ask your questions whenever you will. Don't feel as if you can't say something. Either use a chat box or interrupt me. I'm okay with being interrupted. I want to make you feel safe that you can ask your questions. And as Jenny said, she's recording this. So if you want to understand this even better, maybe look at it afterwards as well. And I'm happy to take questions after the event's happened. I read this book, Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read it, I don't know, sounds like a long time ago, 15 years ago. And it's still around today. And that tells me something, that this book is not only well read, it's well that people actually use it as a Bible when they talk about fear. So one of my things I'll say to you today, it's not an extensive read, it's quite simple in many ways, but she talks about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Yeah, we know it's there, we know we're a bit wobbly, we know we get a bit excited and upset, but just do it anyway. So that's a really good reference for you. The second one, and I often quote this lady, Brené Brown. She's got about 2 million followers on Twitter, and she talks about two concepts mainly. One about being brave. You can't do anything brave if you're wearing the straitjacket of what people will think. And I do find, having worked with many people, hundreds of thousands of people over the last 30 years, when I'm working with younger people, it's the fear of what other people think about them that impacts the performance, often in a negative way. So if you can get rid of that straitjacket of what people think about you, I think that's very important. She also talks about being connected with the world. And when we're connected, things are possible. We feel we've got a purpose. And I think it's really important that we are brave in life, but we're connected so we can get support when we need that support. So there's some overlays for us today. So where is the basis of fear? Where does it come from? Fear is often irrational, so it doesn't make sense. There was a New York Book of Lists in 2005 that listed death as number 2 in fears. So there's something that was worse than death. Now that's irrational, isn't it? And maybe tell what the biggest fear was. Anybody there? You can interrupt me or put some in the chat box. Jenny can facilitate that for me. Just a quick few seconds on that one. So death was being alone.
Failure.
Failure. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to give the answer away unless I get interrupted. Beyond death, number 1 fear was speaking in public. And that was the thing that people were scared of more than anything else. It dominated their lives. Now, fear is real or perceived. So, you might think there's something there that's scaring you. And if it is or isn't, the impact's still the same. So, and it's interesting that often that we think, oh, it's not real to me. I can't see that, Ross. But, I think it's there. And if I think it's there, then it's a real fear for me. So I don't underplay that. It's often based on past perceived experiences. And our brains are very good at creating not just an image, but a sort of narrative of the world based on our experiences, based on our successes and our failures. And we have a certain expectation level And I think sometimes expectations can get us in trouble. It's good to have expectations to improve ourselves, to do qualifications, to go on in the world, and all those things that go with that. But I think this narrative in our head can actually work against us when we're thinking that, oh, it must have been really bad, or I want to get to this level. And it's constantly pushing us. So I think it's really important to understand that we can't control a lot of the outcomes in life. The idea is to change how we think, talk, and act about fear and nerves. And we'll come on to this and we'll dip in and dip out of these thoughts, these emotions, these feelings and actions as we go through it all. Some of the simplest things, and I will come back to this later on, is language. When people say to me, "Are you ever nervous?" And I can honestly say now, I find the question very redundant for me because I like performing. And I feel the better word for me is energized. I'm energized. And when I'm working like this or in front of people, which I prefer, big audience, a lot of people, a lot of buzz in the room, that makes me feel like Ross. So it's not as if I'm nervous. It's the opposite of that. I need to do this to make me feel normal. And there's an interesting story here of David James, the England goalkeeper and Liverpool goalkeeper. And he was in this negative thinking of I can't catch crosses. I'm a great goalkeeper, but crosses are my Achilles heel. And the club manager said to him, "Go and see this chap, and he'll speak to you about it, and he'll think about it." And he went to speak to him about it, and he said, "David, what's the problem?" He said, "I can't catch my crosses." He said, "When's the last time you practiced it?" He said, "Oh, I'm too scared to do that." I said, "There's your challenge." He said, "Because you're avoiding something, it's going to obviously make it worse." He went out and practiced corners. He never had a problem with them since. That's going back to the acting on something and this perceived image of how it's going to be. It's so bad. You know, if we've got this fear, then we can counteract it by preparation and practice and getting some feedback. And if you put a bit of bravery and courageousness in there as well, then I'm sure it's just a matter of time before you get a measure of success linked to your expectations. Okay. And we'll talk a bit today about visualization of the future and confirming ourselves that we are worth something, that we have achievements in life and we are going places. I think it's very important to remember that, because often in life, we always take the negatives, but we don't accept the positives. It's human nature. There's about 6,500 thoughts a day. It sounds a lot, doesn't it? How am I having all those thoughts? But 70% of those are negative. And if you're getting those 70% negative, that's going to have an impact how you view the world, how you interact with the world. So just by being aware of that, trying to change it up a bit more and look for those positives, especially within yourself, can help you challenge fear at its core. Lots of information there. Let's press on. So how to overcome the fears, taming this person, yeah? Fear can be tamed by understanding the why, the rationale. So, you know, from the feedback before, if exams is the biggest challenge we've got on, I won't say a problem, I'll say a challenge. You know, why? Well, I wanted to do these qualifications because I can see a better life with them and it suits my skill set. And I think whenever I do anything, I think, why am I here? I chose to be here. And I will take that pressure that goes with it because I want to improve my life. And when I put the X Factor there, because I always watch, shouldn't say this, but when I watch X Factor, a lot of them get up there and they say, "Oh, I'm very nervous and I don't know why I'm here and why am I doing it?" And I'm thinking, well, you put the application form in most of the times, and it's your opportunity to show what you've got. And you know, the rationale that would carve the nerves is that you chose to be here. You chose to have these exams. You chose this great company to work for, like Kaplan. And once you understand that a bit more, it's a bit of a release and acceptance on things. Fear can be tamed by understanding the body's natural chemical response. So it's quite normal for you to get, as I'll say, excitable with adrenaline and cortisol. When you're faced with a threat or a challenge, the adrenaline, the fight or flight or freeze hormone, is produced in milliseconds. Often accompanying that is cortisol, the stress hormone that helps us cope with these situations. And once you understand, and I've got another slide for this shortly about this, But once you understand that it's a natural process of getting a bit higher breathing rates, pulse rates going up, production of these chemicals, it's getting us ready to perform. It's making us ready to do something. So it's a good thing. And it's about understanding this process in our chemical side of things in our bodies that helps us get a handle on it. I mentioned before about preparation. And I think the more you prepare about something, I think the better you can become. And it's really important to remember this, because you can prepare too much, like exams, cramming last minute, and then you become almost deflated with it all and lose energy and lose sort of the impetus of where you've got to. But the next point is really important, because if you practice something that it becomes rote, you know it, it's memorized, you feel comfortable with it, then you've got more intellectual capacity to deal with other things that might happen in an exam or when you're speaking, or something that gives you fear. If you're always on that limit all the time, anything after that can set you off in a negative spiral. So this preparation lets you dial in. It releases other parts of your brain eventually for you then to feel comfortable with what you're doing, and you've got more capacity to be adaptable. And we often talk about 360-degree feedback. And I think, when you do an exam, for instance, you get feedback, you've passed it or you're not, you'll get a grade. We can do, that's a test, we can get feedback from our line manager, we can get feedback from our peers, from special reports. And I think it's important to look at that, to understand where you might be going wrong on something or might be doing well on something. But there are simple tools to use to help you produce some evidence to say, why is this fear happening? And I think it's really important to remember that, the 360-degree feedback. And I mentioned before about calming and visualizing strategies. Again, the last few seminars back, we talked about some of these calming strategies. I'll give you a quick one now. I hope you can see this. We talked about the chemicals before, and there's one called the butterfly, where we breathe in, and as we breathe out, we touch our solar plexus in our stomach, because 90% of our serotonin production that calms us is in the stomach. And so by breathing in and touching that stomach on the solar plexus and going out, breathing in and out, it's saying to the body, we've got enough chemicals, we don't need any more. I'm recognizing this and I'm aware. And it puts you in a nice place rather than a nervous place. So there are some things that I talk about, maybe not today, but certainly we've got things through Jenny, which you can help with calming and visualization. I often talk about performance circles, and often I was watching, I'm going to show you my sort of interest here. I was watching Strictly Come Dancing on Saturday, and Helen Skelton said, the dancer, she's very competent. She said, before we went on, I couldn't do it, and I ran out the stage door, and I felt I've got to my red zone. And it's interesting that Kay Adams as well, the journalist, said the same thing. She felt she was too much in that red zone, where it becomes too much of a challenge, like it's the worst thing in the world. And I think if you're going to deal with fear, if you're in that red zone, it's not a good place to be, and it could backfire. I always want to let people into that green zone. So today is a bit of a green zone. We're learning something. We're not putting too much pressure on anybody. You're picking up ideas, you're thinking about things, you're hopefully interacting with questions. And I think it's really important. And as a company who you work for, if they're pushing to that red zone all the time, you're not going to get the best out of you. You might have some good episodes, but the story won't end well. And I think it's very important that for you on this course now, this webinar, not to keep beating yourself up, not to keep pushing to that red zone. Things will happen. They'll happen in time, the right support and guidance and feedback and preparation and practice. So don't think it's got to be red zone. Okay, talking about performance, you must have some knowledge to perform. You must have the attitude to deal with some of the failures, the skills associated with that performance, and good regular daily habits. Now, we can get the knowledge, and many people are very sharp, but often they fail, not just in qualification exams, but in other things in life, because they get this nervousness associated with the skills and attitude and habits. And I think the best performers who always get to excellence, it's almost like it's in slow motion, and they know what they're doing, they've prepared it, they've practiced it, they know the stuff, and it's almost like it's rolling out a wheel. And I really think that's important to do that. Don't get too excited. Don't get hyper, and don't let fear drive you into responses that aren't yours. That's another simple example of that. You know, if we're talking about stress in one sense, we want to get to that middle part of it, that optimal zone of performance. We don't want to get bored on one side. We don't want to get, you know, breaking down and exhaustion and illness ultimately on the other side. It's about working with that. Now, sometimes I relate to this when I'm sometimes doing too much and I get a bit tired, but I still want to push myself to prove I can do 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours, or many days working in a week. But I'm recognizing I'm going towards lack of quality. And I think understanding the lack of quality is really important for people. Okay. I mentioned before about adrenaline and cortisol. And if you've had that feeling where you feel instantly overwhelmed, it's called the amygdala hijack. And there's plenty of videos on the internet with this. But as I said, in milliseconds, when you're faced with a threat, those chemicals are produced and they come to the middle part of the brain, the limbic system. And literally within milliseconds, they can flood this system. So your prefrontal cortex can't think. It can't make logical or rational decisions. And so people often stutter or speak fast or do nothing, or in the rabbit in the headlights, and it's hijacked you. And that's a great word, isn't it? The amygdala has hijacked you. It stops you accessing your rational and logical side of things. If you're living in that state constantly, or scared of that state happening constantly, you'll never reach your potential. You'll always be in that red zone I mentioned before. Again, I'm mentioning this now to make you aware that these things are quite natural. And once we have awareness, like a self-diagnosis, what's going on, we can plan a route out of here. I think it's very important when my internet went out before, not to go to that, oh my God, I'll miss this session with these people, just to think, well, we'll do what I always do, switch it off, relax, don't get too upset, we'll come on, we'll do it, or we won't. That's what I think as well, my backstop. And yet I'm here now doing it. Okay, so that's interesting. It's not you, it's your body, okay? So, and a simple one to look at here, and interrupt me when you want, there's any questions coming through, Jenny.
Ross, could we pause there for a second? We've had a couple of questions. One about the amygdala hijack, and would an effect strategy be exposed to it a lot of time to desensitize to it?
Yeah,
would an effective strategy be to expose to it a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of therapists out there who use desensitization techniques. And a simple one might be like, I don't like snakes. So look at the snake, eventually get near the snake, touch the snake, kiss the snake even, and then people can get desensitized. It doesn't work with everybody, but the same principle, if you're facing that fear regularly, it could work. The danger is you could spend too long in that red zone, getting there, then you might think your motivation goes altogether. I don't want to do this anymore. I've just been frayed. I'm stressed out. I've got illness. What I wanted 2 months ago, I don't want anymore. So I think it's all about your own pace. I think desensitization does work in a professional capacity. But I go back to what I said at the start. Try and have a little bit of bravery. Pick your moments when you feel good. Practice the stuff. Get some good support around you. And just put it in context why you want to do it, that rationale. That's always important. When I'm speaking somewhere, and one of my first gigs was 30,000 people. And I thought to myself, whoa, this is a big gig. But I then thought to myself, well, if I don't do it well, I'll feel terrible afterwards. And I'd rather be doing it than watching it. And that's how I think in my mind. And I like to be a bit of an egotist. I like people to look and to listen, to share, and to help people rather than consuming something all the time. So I think there is definite, if it's a therapy side of response to that, the desensitization is very powerful. Was there another question there as well, Jenny?
Yes, there was. There's a good question in from Liam, who asks, going back to that side on cash, knowledge, attribute, skills and
habits.
Habits. The question from Liam is, how much do you think habits influence attitude, and can a change in one improve both?
Absolutely. They're interlinked, and they're very similar words, aren't they? Your attitude to something probably brought about by your experiences growing up, your parents, your friendships, your education, your work. And you know, you're going to work with that attitude to develop some habits that work really well. So we've got to do some work. If we do too much work as a habit, that can tire us out. So we know habits can be very useful for us. and it's working out what are your best habits. Some people don't have good habits and they go to avoidance, like procrastination on exams and revision, which is not a good habit. Your attitude's good, you want to achieve the qualifications, but your habits are not letting you sort of reach your potential in terms of your knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. So it's really important that they are linked. And again, I'll come back to this. Don't beat yourself up all the time when you can't do something at one particular time. Often take a break and reflect, get some support, and then try and nudge it along these habits. Habits, they say, take from 3 weeks to 3 months to form. And nothing changes massively overnight. But I think making small steps, having a go at something, getting a bit of feedback and nudging again, exactly what we're talking about on the screen now, is a good way to develop better habits. And when you want to know if you've got good habits, your results will tell you, but your friends and mentors and people in your workplace will tell you as well. They'll mention things to you. Yeah, it's a very subtle one that happens over time. Okay, let's move this on a little bit. Who do you get the most accurate form of feedback from, do you think? What do people think? Is it from a test? Is it from your peers? Is it from your bosses, your line managers at work? Any questions there? What do you think the most accurate form of feedback is?
People are saying yourself, peers, tutors, family.
Yeah. It depends what you read. And, you know, I could think I know myself very well. I could do a test to prove that. I could speak to my line manager. I could speak to my friends. But consistently, what comes out most accurate about someone's behavior and abilities and capabilities is the feedback from the peers. The peers is where it's at. So we have a jaundiced view of ourselves. We have our own narrative in our head, I mentioned before. Other people can see it much more clearly. And I think that's important for feedback. So if you think you're struggling with the fear, about something specifically, ask your friends about that. I think it's really important to remember that, because that will ground you. Because as human beings, like I said, 6,500 thoughts, 70% negative, we've got a natural habit of looking for the worst case scenario. It's called catastrophization. And it's something we do really, really well. To stop that process, and which happened a lot in the pandemic, by stopping on your own, don't talk to people, don't mingle. To stop that process, be connected. And this is where Brené Brown comes about, being connected with people, getting that 360-degree view, especially from your peers. Okay, we're doing really well. Let's do a little checklist for progress. Okay, so these are just open questions for you. Are you willing to accept that past experiences might not hold accurate evidence for you? You know, if I fail my maths 4 times at school, does it mean I'm rubbish at maths? Well, I'm maybe not an Einstein, but I've learned how to pass exams. I've learned how to pass statistics at university. And again, I won't pull myself up to you guys, accountants and people in this game, but I've got a measure of credibility, I would say. So past experiences might not be always accurate. Are you willing to accept these past experiences now in the past, and you are different now? You're different now than you were yesterday. And as we grow and develop and prosper, we sometimes live in the past and think this is who we are, this is my ceiling. But we're all changing, we're all growing. And it's important to recognize that. Are you willing to take new challenges and be brave? Yeah, this is a really good question. If you didn't give me that, I'd have a really boring life, a very limited life, and it wouldn't fulfill me whatsoever. I tried it, it doesn't work for me. I don't want to do retirement. I don't want to do less than what I'm doing now. In fact, I do want to do more at my pace. So I want to take on new challenges and be brave. Are you willing to practice, perform, and evaluate? Some people don't like this. They haven't got the habit skill set to do this, to put the work in, to practice it, to get some feedback and evaluate it. Yeah, you've got to open yourself up a bit to this. This is why I talk about that green zone performance, not opening up to the red zone, but to the green. Can you visualize your future? You know, there's a book called The Secret by Rona Byrne, and so simply it's very simplistic. You read it and you visualize the future like a check coming through the door. It's going to happen. I'm not a big believer in that personally, but I think it's going to do you more good than harm to think about some positive things in the future. And I think as long as your expectations are within your capabilities, like I don't want to be a mathematician, but as long as they're within your capabilities, I think visualizing the future, remembering you've got some good stuff going on, is very powerful to stop these negative chemicals hijacking you. And we're all worth something. We really are. I did an activity a while ago. I'm just checking my watch now. We've got a bit of time for this, and I'm going to try and do it with a group here, Jenny. And I think there's 10 questions, and it's rhetorical. I don't want to hear your answers. By all means, put some comments in the chat box. I'm going to put these questions up about yourselves now. Okay. So what is your biggest barrier? You don't have to answer me. Just think about it now. What's your biggest barrier? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 is low stress and 10 is high stress, how do you rate yourself at this moment in time now? How do you feel about these barriers in 6 months' time, when you've grown and developed and improved? Maybe had a few drops in form, but on a trajectory that's upwards. How do you feel about these barriers in 6 months' time? What one thing can you do today to reduce your barriers? Well, you're doing one thing on this course. Yeah, there might be something else you can do to reduce these barriers. Take up some information we've talked about and explore it. Have you got any evidence that, yes, your view of the past is 100% correct? That you're always choking in front of exams, or you're always nervous about a new experience? Yeah. Where is the evidence? Because often it's anecdotal. It's somebody's opinion. Not often is it based in pure evidence. If you're not sure, check with your friends. Who else can give you support with this challenge? Yeah. There's so many people and places and things out there to support us, that we need to be active on this. We don't want inertia. We want to be active. We want to source these out and see if we can help us with this journey. Can you really put your intellect and effort into attacking this challenge before it gets too big? Can you be real professional with a capital P? Right, I'm in a situation, I've got this fear. Right, let's have some breaths. Let's think about this. Let's get a plan of attack. Let's be brave. Let's have a go for it. Can you make a commitment to at least keep trying to reduce your barriers? Now, you might think that's giving up to failure, but no. Being in the fight, if you want to call it that, is a strength. Yeah, it really is a strength to actually keep challenges rather than to hide. Most people, when they get behaviors they don't like, they avoid something like the snake. They avoid it, avoid exams, avoid this, avoid learning, procrastinate. They will guarantee you will not get success. On a scale of 1 to 10, okay, how do you rate your score now from like 2 minutes ago? Hopefully I've given you some hope and optimism, some specific tips there and places to go to that you can change this. So fear can be tamed. We know it can be tamed. Does anybody else want to chat about that on screen? Anything coming in?
I've got people saying that they themselves are the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
One.
Often that is the case, and we should be our biggest cheerleader. If that means stepping over a little bit more egotistical and rather on that side of the coin, rather than a bit more pushing yourself down on not good enough side of things. I used to work a long time ago, a lot of, and I'll say this word, damaged children. They were very young, 12, 13, 14. They had horrendous upbringings. And when anything slightly went wrong, or they thought it might go wrong, that real and perceived, they were dissing themselves, right down themselves all the time. And I've worked with other cohorts in society, adults and children, who, when something goes wrong, they think, right, you won't get me next time. And that's the attitude and difference. I'm not blaming these children who were very challenged. They were sort of inculcated in that behavior. But I often see people, right, give me another go. I love that enthusiasm, that energy. And then sometimes it's sorted straight away. Sometimes it takes that preparation and practice and feedback, but you're in that fight. Anything else on there, Jenny?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. Somebody's asking, how would you tackle your own barrier of procrastination as avoidance? And someone else is commenting that it's a while since they've done any formal studying, so that's the fear of not succeeding with that.
Yeah, I'll take them in reverse order. That fear of studying, you haven't done it for a long time. It starts, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You might want to say, I'll do 10 minutes today doing something. I've found as I've got older, I can do long hours studying, but I'm much better at sort of convincing myself and tricking myself, just a few mini sessions. So I do half hour here, do an hour there, then do a 10-minute revision session. We talked about the power hour before, about, you know, learning something, remembering it, breaking it, having a break, then going again, learning some more, testing yourself, and have another break. And I think break it down to little segments that's achievable, because the thought of studying for some things, say for instance, the PhD, 5 years part-time for me, wow, where does that make me a pensioner by the time I finish? That would scare me. Yeah, break it down. Have I got the right course? Yeah, I've got the right materials, I've got the right tutor. Where's my goals for each few months? You know, that's how I break things down. And what was your first question again, Jenny?
But how would you tackle your own barrier of procrastination as avoidance?
Yeah, it's recognizing that probably you don't always, I'm guessing here that most people aren't always procrastinators. It's something they've dropped into. So there might be times in the past looking for evidence when they weren't procrastinators. Yeah. So looking for that positive evidence when you didn't procrastinate, how do you feel? What did you do to get over something? So try and paint that picture when you weren't a procrastinator. What you did different then that you're doing not so different now? And often this is where the habits come into it. Little habits over time can make a massive impact for us. So look for the positive evidence before. Nothing ever stays the same in life. So as much as you think, oh, I'll always be a procrastinator, Ross, I've always have been, and there's always evidence to show that. Well, you won't always stay there. It will change in somehow. It will get worse, it will get better. And I think that's the only comforting thing about life. It's always changing. Mm. And if we're here today trying to challenge this, it's going to be tiring at times. But if you're up for that fight, keep in that green zone, keep nibbling away. There's a good word, nibbling away at it, getting that support around you. Don't be prepared to put the effort in. Be a little bit brave when you feel brave. Things will change. That's a necessary component of life.
A couple of people are commenting on, and you touched on it in terms of breathing, but the physical manifestations of fear, like feeling physically ill in the first 20 minutes of an exam, or your legs wobbling when you stand up to give a speech, or how do you calm yourself? Other techniques. I think we're going to come on to some of those, are we?
Yeah, the techniques, we talked about the breathing one with the hands on the solar plexus. People can actually do the hug one as well. That visceral feedback that's touching and holding. And that's why embracing and holding other people is a very powerful thing to feel good and connected. That release of serotonin that calms us, and dopamine, the reward hormone that makes us feel uplifted, things are going to get better. I can see hope and recovery are very powerful. And I think, you know, the visualization is something I've got a little bit to do in a second or two, but it's in that moment where you feel it's becoming too much for you, and it's overflowing almost, but you have got a measure of control. And I think there's a lot of merit in different breathing techniques. We talk about box breathing, breathing in, holding, and breathing out, and then pushing out. So hold, like the hand one, breathing in and breathing out, and breathing in and breathing out. And what it's saying that to your body is that, yeah, I'm under a bit of a fight here, but I'm going to calm it down. I'm going to slow it down. So my actual brain, my prefrontal cortex, can start to think and be rational. It can't think and be rational at the moment because I feel like I'm there. It's right in front of me. So if I just breathe and slow down, distract myself, those chemicals have to go away from that part of the brain. They can't stay there all the time. So if you're going to play that game where, you know, I'm going to breathe with this breathing now, as long as it takes, it will calm it down. And eventually it does calm down. Now that period might last longer than you want it to, but eventually it does calm down. An extreme example of that, when I had about 60 panic attacks 10 years ago, and as I got through them all and knew they were coming, then experienced them, they got shorter and shorter, and now they don't exist anymore. And it's just being comfortable with what's happening with you, rather than going to that siege mentality. Just relax and yield. Yield to that fear. Okay, feel the fear and do it anyway. Susan Jeffers says, right, okay, I'm feeling upset and tense. Right, give us your best effort. And I did my panic attacks. Go on, give me a heart attack. Go on. No, you can't do it, can you? And I used to talk very literally to myself, that self-talk, because I knew what was happening. My body was over-responding to a fear that wasn't actually there. And I think most times, if you hold into that situation through breathing or visualization or just being nicely resilient with it, it all subsides. And I think then when it subsides, you do the practice and preparation and get support. Okay, little exercise.
I've got a couple of other questions. Should we?
Go on.
Yeah, should we do those at the end?
No, do the questions now if you want them now.
Okay, lovely, thank you. We've got somebody asking about the best type of feedback. Going back to that point of view about 10 minutes ago, we're talking about feedback. What works best, positive, negative, or a bit of both?
I think you've got to have honest feedback, but that honest feedback is only from that person. You know, when you go to a test, that's very matter of fact, very precise. And I think getting 2 or 3 people in your close circle of people, they'll probably give you a trend or a theme. Okay. I don't think they'll be massively different from each other. So you're looking for themes and trends in that feedback. Okay. They've all said that. Maybe I need to change something. Maybe there's something there that I'm not seeing. And we have an exercise called Johari's window where I talk about, say, I could talk with you, Jenny, about my strengths. And this is what I know I've got. And you say, right, Ross, yeah, I can see that, but there's some weaknesses here. But there might be something within, and these into 4 quadrants, where we can start being honest with each other and saying, well, when I get to do an exam, I always get this feeling, and I start having this bad habit, and I always know I'm going to fail at procrastination. Then I end up failing. And then having that ability to talk to somebody else, someone to listen to you and point out the positives in an exercise, for me, is a very fulfilling exercise because it makes you be nicely vulnerable. And often fears they thrive on vulnerability. But in this case, being vulnerable about what your strengths and weaknesses are then becomes a strength. It's an interesting one, is it? Because there's no quick answers here. And I do think you've got to play with it and keep with it. Go on, Jenny.
Should we just do one more and then we'll see where we get to towards the end? So somebody's asking, you've talked about Brene Brown and Susan Jeffers. Are there any other books or podcasts you'd recommend about building and forming new habits?
Yeah, habits. They always mention about confidence. If you put self-esteem into the internet, you'll get about 45 million responses. And I suspect it's very similar with habits. On one of the last webinars, I talked about some of the habits books that I used to read. And there's one about willpower. It's a great one by Tina and Baumeister. They talk about habits. There was the 2 brothers in America who started off how habits form us. And I'll remember that, and I'll put it in the chat box afterwards. And if I don't get it on time, Jenny, Chip and Dan Heath are the 2 guys. They talk about habits, Chip and Dan Heath. And we talked about The Elephant and the Rider a few months ago on some of our presentations. But Chip and Dan Heath, it's a very easy read, lots of stories which I like, but really stuff that's very hard to argue against. So you got to work with your motivation, your willpower, because the willpower is finite, and habits come when we're aware of how we operate. So for instance, I operate better in the morning. I don't operate well when I expect too much of myself. I operate well when I've got some support, when I can see something real approaching, I get excited about it. Okay, so habits are good one. That's a really good book to read. Okay, so language and thinking. Nerves. When I say you're nervous, I'll say I'm excited. I've got energy. Yeah. And you might have your own words for this as well now. And nothing wrong with nerves, but I think it's helping me. My chemicals are helping me reach the best version of Ross. So I like them, they're friends. Sweating and hyperventilating, the body is telling me it's ready. It's ready. Now you can get over ready, hyper excited, which is not good, but it's telling me we're ready. When we catastrophize the future, the worst things are going to happen. I always say to myself, will it kill me? And the panic attacks of 16 never killed me. And when I've been on stage, I've always lived. And I'm thinking now that, you know what, it doesn't kill me. I quite enjoy doing it. And more than enjoying it, I need to do it. And there's an interesting switch on language. I like doing stuff, but I need to do it now. And so retirement, I can't retire because I need to perform. And once you put fear in those words, for me, and it could be for yourselves, it changes the whole nature of it. I talk about alliterations and confirmations. So I talk about resilient Ross, like joyful Jenny, or improvised Ishraq. It's something simple, but you know, a positive word that goes with your first name. You know, people say to me, often they say to me over the years, you work it out, Ross. You can do it, you'll work it out. And they know me because I always do. So people at my age are retiring. It's the last thing I want to do. I always trying to work it out in my own way. I like to call that creative. Some people call it slow. I like calling it creative. So what is your new alliteration, confirmation name? A sentence that sums you up, okay? Always ready to perform and grow. That's what I like doing. And when I'll give you another one, which I thought about yesterday, in fact. I've been in a lot of pain with my joints recently, and I've got some operations coming up. But I just said to myself, you know, the worse the pain, the greater the sense of victory in the end. And I keep saying things like that for me, that, yeah, I'm going through something maybe not other people have been through at this sort of level, this duration of 38 years. But, you know, the greater that pain, the sweeter that taste of success will be in the end. And I always think like that future forward thinking. Anchors, okay. Anchoring ourselves is really important when that fear can grip us. Like I said before, it can't grip you 24/7. It comes and it goes. So we have anchors, which on the next slide shows us about different types of anchors. They use these in a lot of sports, but people have sort of a kinesthetic anchor. So putting your fingers and thumbs together, that's physically, people then breathe. And they're saying, okay, I'm getting a bit excited. There's my change of words. I know what's going to happen. It'll take me a few moments, I'll be over it, or it'll take me longer, but I'll be over it. But I'm going to be in control today. And that's a physical anchor. And you're being distracted from the chemicals in your body, from the performance in a minute, just in this moment. Yeah. I used to be commercial manager at Preston North, and on match days, it was very hectic. And I often found myself running faster than what my brain could think and what my body could move. And when I get to those moments, I'd often get the keys in my pocket and throw them on the floor. Okay, Ross, 3 breaths, pick the keys up, back in your pocket, and walk down that corridor to a room of 300 people. And it always worked for me. It just slowed me down, got me in the moment. Okay, let's go for it. So people can hear or see things as a visual cue. So, you know, if you're going to a big room where looking around the room saying, I'm not getting overexcited, the chemicals, you can come and try me, but I'm not being that, I'm not going to run away today. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to perform. So people have different things to look at, or memories of smells, like baked bread, for instance, what your mother used to make or your father used to make. And you have these emotions linked to your senses. They can be very powerful for you, you know? So again, I spent some time in the last few months doing this. If people want me to go into this next time on how to anchor for performance, we can explore this even more deeply. Sometimes, you know, we did a mountain scene last time, Jenny, didn't we? Where I told you to climb a mountain with a goal in mind. And I gave you some really strange questions, how to unseat this subconscious, this part of our brain, the subconscious brain. So we think we're in control, 10% of our mind is in control, but there's things beneath the surface, like an iceberg, that can affect our moods, affect our habits, our attitudes, things that happen, generally speaking, in the past. Some of those children I work with, they were quite damaged. And if something can happen, and sometimes they go back to type and they become very inclusive and they don't want to stretch out of this comfort zone. So when we talk about a visualization in the future, we could do, but I almost use this thinking of what's happened in the past, like a bit of therapy, going back when I got a bad result in maths. Okay, was it a great school? Did I put enough work in? Why is he always playing football? Yeah, but I'm different now, Ross. I've got the motivation. I need to pass this. So I'm going to put some more effort in. That was the old Ross. The new Ross is always willing to grow and perform and improve. So I can take people on journeys to the future or go to the past. And I think it unlocks that subconscious state in people. So specificity of performance, exam failure, you know, how can we get through that? Practice under as specific conditions as possible. If you can, in the same sort of room you're going to be in, that or the exact room. Timings, exam waiting and planning, rather than getting faster and faster, which happens when we're fearful. We get really fast, or we go into that sort of trance-like, static, hypnotic state where we can't move. So by doing those breathing techniques, and thinking about exam failure in terms of the timings, the questions, how many do I answer, which are the best weighted ones, how do I plan this, do my best one first, do my worst one first. These are all questions we can talk about to help you get over this exam failure. Looking at past paper content and your previous error areas. It's not just doing loads and loads of past papers content, because that's it's specific in one sense, but it's not specific to your errors. And you need to drill down onto that. What are you doing wrong that if you change, you would get a pass, a commendation, a distinction? We often talk about memory being massively affected by fear, which can be the case. So by having memory cues in a situation, so acronyms like HOLMES, the Great Lakes of Canada, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior, I don't have to think about retrieving that information. It's just on a cue. And when we're a bit panicky, cues are very good for us. They help us act like robots in a good way. I mentioned before peer cross-referencing. And motivation can be quite fluid. And we might describe ourselves as motivated, not very motivated, or hyper motivated. And there's all benefits of some states of that, because hyper motivation, you'll wear yourself out. Low motivation, you won't achieve your potential. But I want to give you a bit of help before the end about some role models. Can you tell me who these two people are? Anybody?
The first one, people are answering. John Snow.
John Snow, brilliant. So John Snow, there is life after A-levels. He got a GCSE C and no A-levels. And he said, toil in hope and you will get there. You know, always believe in yourself. He's an international broker. The guy on the right, anybody? It's a difficult question.
Yeah, you foxed us with that one.
Okay. So my sense of failure was my closest friend. He got in his A-levels 3 Fs and an E. He's now a neuroscientist, Dr. Mark Lithgow. So ultimate failure. And the last one, if you want to be an entrepreneur, Stuart Miller. He's now has turnover 73 million, employees 500 people. They didn't always used to be like that. He borrowed lots of money in 2000, had a small staff, and got his device wrong. And he had to rebuild it again, got the networks, the channels, but he was a failure. He went on BBC Radio 4 in 2015. I'm a failure, but I'm resilient failure. And I think that's where we haven't mentioned much today, that resilience. So we're going out of time. There's the last slide. Jenny, do you want to pick that up and ask any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ross. We've had some other questions of people asking for where they can get further support. So this is a timely slide. There's a really good series on the website, Kaplan website, about mental fitness and wellbeing. And we've got a Learning My Way microsite that apprentices use as well. So do contact your talent coach if you haven't got access to that yet. If there's anything really, serious and you need to make us aware, do reach out to us at the safeguarding email address there, safeguarding@kaplan.co.uk. And we'll be back with Ross William on the 26th of October. That's on Eventbrite 2, and we'll be posting information about that on My Kaplan for you as well, so you can log in and book in from there. Just a couple of other things, finally. One is these sessions come about because of feedback you've given us in previous sessions. And so I'm just going to put the survey link into the chat now. And we'd love you to tell us what you would like to come next in this series and how you found that. We've got some lovely comments coming in. And then finally, I'm just going to find the results of our poll at the beginning, where we asked you what was you were afraid of failing at. So there we go, Ross. It's exams, relationships, and work with the top 3 fails that we've got.
Yeah, that being a good person is an interesting one. Negative thoughts, 70% of them. Why don't you switch it around and, have 70% positive thoughts and think, you know what? Say you're a good person, because more than likely you are, and you can become a better person by having that concept in your mind.
Yeah. So lovely comments there. Thank you, everybody. We'll stay on the line for a couple of minutes because we have some questions in the Q&A that we haven't been able to answer. So, but we understand if you need to drop off now, that's absolutely fine. And if something does happen and that you do fail an exam or you don't get the mark and you want in your apprenticeship, then try again. You know, as Ross was saying, so many people overcome these things and go on to perform better. It's just that we need to grow from the learning that we had from it. So we wish you all the very best, and we look forward to seeing you in October. I'll stop the recording now and then we'll stay on for the questions. Thanks, everybody.
It just reminded me, Jenny, of when I used to work at Man City, and they used to say, we never lose, we always learn. And it's an interesting concept, and they're the top team. So we never lose,
yes,
we
it
always
is going
learn.
to be recorded and we will share it on our YouTube channel. All right, I'm stopping the recording now. Thanks everyone for joining. Actually, if I do that, I just want to.
More questions there.